Marlon Brando hated him more than anyone else, the secret war behind Hollywood's golden age. Hollywood, 1954. The bright lights of Sunset Boulevard hide countless secrets. Among the legendary faces of that era, none is more enigmatic than Marlon Brando, star of A Train Named Desire and The Harbor. But behind his calm exterior lies a fierce rage, directed at a man Brando once called the most hypocritical man in Hollywood. That man was none other than James Dean. When two legends met. In 1952, when James Dean was still an unknown young actor, he idolized Marlon Brando. Dean would go to the cinema just to watch the wild one over and over again, studying how Brando moved, spoke, and even kept quiet. He imitated Brando so much that his friends called him Young Brando. When they first met in a Beverly Hills coffee shop, Dean was just an awkward 21-year-old, and Brando was already a big star. Dean approached him with a trembling voice and said, "You're the reason I wanted to be an actor." Brando just glanced at him and replied coldly, "Don't copy me, find yourself." From that moment, a strange relationship began, between idol and fan, between teacher and student, but also between two fated rivals. Admiration turns to hate. At first, Brando found it funny. He saw himself in Dean, rebellious, lonely, and ambitious. But when Dean became famous with the film East of Eden, 1955, Brando began to realize the public was seeing Dean as a new, younger, more attractive version of himself. The newspapers of the time were headlined, "Dean, the next Brando? The new face of rebellion." And that made Brando's blood boil. He once said in an interview, "Dean doesn't live like an artist. He plays James Dean even when the cameras aren't rolling." In Brando's eyes, Dean was no longer a passionate student. He was a threat, someone who had stolen his style, the hearts of the audience, and even his identity. Behind-the-scenes gossip. It is said that on the set of Rebel Without a Cause, Dean often pretended to call Brando, complaining about the director or acting, just to make others think the two were close friends. Brando heard about this and was extremely angry, thinking that Dean was using his name to build an image. At a Warner Brothers party, when a drunken Dean tried to strike up a conversation, Brando coldly ignored him. An eyewitness reported that Brando whispered to a friend, "That kid's going to destroy himself. I don't have to do anything." And tragically, just a few months later, James Dean died in a car accident in 1955, at the age of 24. Brando didn't shed a tear. News of Dean's death shocked Hollywood. Elizabeth Taylor, Natalie Wood, and hundreds of other stars cried at the funeral. But Brando didn't. He even refused to attend. When a journalist asked him how he felt, Brando replied curtly, "He lived fast, died fast. That's what he always wanted." Many saw it as cruelty, but those close to Brando understood it was anger mixed with regret. He once told his close friend Karl Malden privately, "I hate him because he makes me feel old, but I also hate myself for never telling him that I really like him." The secret behind the hate. Brando wasn't just jealous of Dean's fame. He was jealous of the freedom Dean had. While Brando was caught between fame, scandal and pressure, Dean lived like the wind, impulsive, wild, but true. In a letter later leaked, Brando wrote to his friend, "Dean is everything I ever wanted, someone who isn't afraid to lose, isn't afraid to love, isn't afraid to live." Perhaps hate was just Brando's way of protecting himself from the pain of self-examination. Because Dean was the mirror of the soul Brando had lost. The ghost of James Dean still haunts. After Dean died, Brando avoided mentioning him for many years. But when filming The Godfather in 1972, someone saw him carrying an old photo of Dean in his jacket pocket, taken during the Rebel Without a Cause era. An assistant asked, "Do you still have this photo?" Brando simply replied, "That boy reminds me of the man I used to be." In his later years, when interviewed by Larry King, Brando said a sentence that left the audience speechless. "I don't hate James Dean. I hate that he died before I could apologize." The price of genius. Both Marlon Brando and James Dean were two lost souls in the same glamorous world. They carried within them the loneliness of true artists, people who deeply understood that each role was just a mask. Dean lived fast and died young, becoming a symbol of young rebels. Brando lived longer, but much of his life was haunted by regret, loneliness, and